Good evening, Hub Nation. Welcome to another episode of 5 Elements of Success Player Development Series. I'm Roger Nick, your host and founder of Junior Golf Hub. We're here again at Golf Performance Center. A beautiful evening coming to you live. So we're really excited about this episode. We're going to continue our primary fundamental discussion. We talked last week about ground forces. This week we're going to be getting into rotation, posture and rotation, and what that does to affect ball striking. So we're really excited about that. Before we get there, just make sure you're sending in your questions, comments, concerns, feedback. We want to hear your feedback. We want to help you reach your ultimate goals in golf and in life. So we need that feedback. So please send that in, 5elementsofthegolfperformancecenter.com, our YouTube chat. Really like to hear from you. So I appreciate that a lot. Also, pop quiz tonight. We're going to talk about the difference between static posture and dynamic posture. We're going to be talking about that during the show, so stay tuned. Give you a chance to win $25 off the Junior Golf Hub Premium membership. Again, let me repeat that. You get a chance to win $25 off Junior Golf Hub Premium membership. You know why it's $25? Because it's our 25th episode.
There you go. We're excited. We're excited.
Yeah, really excited about that. So again, thanks for tuning in. I know you guys have been watching every episode. So again, thanks so much for your support. So continue to watch. Before we get into this episode, Tyler, let's talk about last week.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, last week we talked about our first primary fundamental, ground forces. We had Dr. Scott Lynn on the show from Swing Catalyst, and he looked at, used the technology to look at the swings of two of our junior golf athletes and really how they develop power. We talked about the three types of force development in the golf swing: horizontal, vertical, and torque, and the kinetic sequence there that's involved. So we were excited to have Dr. Scott Lynn, kind of dive a little deeper, and really very informational episode. If you've missed any previous episodes, they're available on juniorgolfhub.com/5elements or also on the Golf Performance Center YouTube page. Yeah, again, thanks so much, Tyler, our co-host, and also Dennis Hillman, the Director of Coaching here at the Golf Performance Center. Thanks, you guys, again, for being part of this 25th episode.
Absolutely, happy to be
here. Really a lot of fun. And we got another special guest today, Alex Hume, coming on, one of your lead coaches here, and talking about the posture and what we're going to be doing there. But before we get into that, Dennis, you've had the chance to work with so many of these junior golfers and help them get better at what they're doing. Obviously, learning from ground forces, we've learned so much about what happens to the body through the pressure going into the ground, pushing back against the body, but that's where it really kind of it really hits us in the sense of how do we strike the golf ball better. You have a mantra that you talk about, and I wonder, could you share that with the audience and what that is?
Yeah, so, obviously today is about posture, and we look at it as, the name of the game is to get the ball in the hole in the least amount of strokes possible. We know to do that, you have to control the golf ball. To do that, you have to control the club face, which means you have to control the path. So, the movement of the golf club, but it's really dictated by the movement of your body, or what we call moving from static to dynamic posture. So, static posture is really the posture you have it set up. So just like any other sport, right, you have, whether you're waiting for the snap in football or waiting for a ground ball in baseball, there's a posture to it. There's a ready position that sets you up to move athletically. And in this case, generate force and control the golf club.
Yeah, and you want to hit it down the fairway a little bit too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting too, Dennis, that we hear very often coaches talk to their players about, hey, let's just relax into posture.
Right.
Is that a good idea?
No, not necessarily. Again, this is a sport. I think people realize you turn on the TV and watch, the guys and girls out there at the highest level. It's no question it's a ballistic move, and you've got to be ready. You can't just be relaxed. Right now I'm not ready to hit a golf ball. I got to jump on the ground and be, leverage the ground and be ready to move. So, being relaxed at setup is not exactly how it works.
No, I don't think so. And I think, Tyler, if I were to say, getting underweight and being relaxed and saying, hey, just kind of feel it. Yeah. I wouldn't push too much weight there.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, as Dr. Brandt's talked about in the past, starts with your intention, right?
Yeah.
It starts with your intention, what you're about to do, whether it is lift weight or swing the golf club. Physically, I'm going to bring it back to function dictates form. We say it each week. Hopefully this is ingrained in all of our viewers' minds at this point, how important this means. But again, our physical ability to move is going to dictate the technique that we bring to the mechanics of the golf swing. So when Dennis talks about proper body alignment, it's really about getting the joints in a position that they're able to move most optimally, right? And so Likewise with the muscles, they're in that length-tension relationship where they're able to fire. They're not stretched so long that they're not going to be efficient when you ask them to do their job. They're there to support you and ready to work. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about posture, really for that reason, to set yourself up for success once that club starts to move.
Well, in that, then talking about function dictates form means that you probably have to do some type of physical assessment to understand, are there any limitations that's creating that? And again, we had a very good player in yesterday, and we were going through a whole assessment with him, and we noticed that obviously very physically limited in some areas.
Sure.
And that affected his posture, it affected ground force, obviously it affected his speed, and certainly path control, right? So what are those areas that you would say you'd be looking for?
Yeah, the two main muscle groups that we look at here at the Golf Performance Center, and this is a little bit of a broad statement, but the two large muscle groups that we look at first and foremost are going to be the hamstrings and the lats. All right, the lats are the large muscles down the side of your back. On the bodybuilder guys, you'll see that big V back, those lats. And Bryson DeChambeau, again, he's talked about how much the lats have been important in him developing power, but also the hamstring. So if either of those muscle groups are tight or not working properly, it's going to be difficult to stay in dynamic posture throughout the golf swing. The lats might have a tendency to want a kind of fake rotation, if you will, by maybe letting the arms just move across the body if they're tight. You might also want to stand up out of your posture as you take the club away and maybe result in a little bit of a flat shoulder path. The hamstrings, if those are tight, typically we're going to see that the golfer wants to early extend because those hamstrings, they like to stay happy is how I like to say it. They don't like to be stretched too much.
Yeah.
So they're going to move into a position that keeps them relaxed, if you will. So the basic screens that we like to use at home, we're going to go with a simple toe touch, and then we're going to go with an overhead deep squat. And again, we've covered those screens in past episodes, so go ahead and check those out. But those are two screens that we know that if you struggle to complete, you're probably going to have a difficult time staying in dynamic posture as you take the club back.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things we've talked a lot about in our self-assessment. So if you go on the Junior Golf Hub, try to go through our PDI self-assessment, you'll start to understand, really kind of what we're talking about.
Right.
You'll know that you probably need to go see maybe an expert to maybe get some help, put some eyes on you, make sure you're doing these things correctly. So, again, check out that self-assessment. It may help you get better there. But Dennis, more about kind of getting the ball in the hole, least amount of strokes possible, controlling that club path. What are some of the things that you do from a coaching perspective to get these young athletes to understand that and be engaged in this process?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's really commonplace out there. There's a lot of great technologies, a lot of great simulators that can give you that feedback on club path and club face and what the golf ball is doing. And I think a lot of instruction out there and a lot of the excitement is around, how do I affect change on the club path and the club face. And I think to some extent there's some like magic tricks going on out there which doesn't actually leave the athlete better off, where you just try to affect my path is in to out, and so I'm gonna just try to make it go out to in without understanding the underlying cause, which is really coming out of what we call coming out of posture. It could be early extension. There are different forms of coming out of posture and different things that work in the body, different areas of instability or tightness that as you're generating maximum force can pull you out of posture and make you less efficient. So just trying to get the juniors to really understand that.
Yeah, and that's hard to understand because they're also, and I'm sure you guys are out there, you've probably been on YouTube and see different players doing different things in different magazines, understanding what's right for them and not just what works for somebody else. And I think that's really difficult at times to even parents to understand that for the young athletes to go, hey, what's good for them may not be good for you. So, what are some of the things that, if you were going to build the best golfer ever, how would you start to doing that?
Yeah, and I think these episodes are really important because we're really speaking to where we would start. We would start at the ground, and that's what we've talked about the last couple of weeks for sure, and how that relates to, Alex is going to talk about posture, static posture to start. And so that's really where it would start, is just getting in that good athletic setup, understanding where your balance should be, understanding your posture, and understanding the physical work that needs to go into play so that from that good static posture you can move really well.
Yeah, well, without further ado, let's welcome in Alex Hume, one of our lead coaches here at the Golf Performance Center. Alex, why don't you demonstrate, have Dennis, maybe you guys go through a demonstration of the posture drill and why that's important.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alex is going to go ahead and demonstrate how we train our junior athletes to understand how to get into good posture. So, good posture, and Tyler can talk about it more. He talked about joint alignment. So if we look at the spine, just keeping it in a good neutral position, right? Keeping the vertebrae in a neutral position from tailbone to cranium. So Alex is going to go ahead and stand tall. So Alex is a right-handed golfer. He's going to stand tall, and he's actually going to put the grip end of the club right under your nose there against your mouth, right? So the cervical spine is part of the spine, so we want to keep the entire spine in neutral. You can hold it against your stomach with your left hand. So again, I'm speaking to the right-handed golfers out there. So he's going to go ahead and do a hip hinge and add his knee flex only at the very end. So as he hinges from his hips, he's going to feel the right hand go all the way down to the top of the knee. When he gets to the top of the knee, you can stop and add your knee flex. Okay, and get a sense of where he is in his posture there. Also going to want to bring your attention back to, or your focus back to your feet, and where do you feel your balance right there?
So I feel my balance in the front of the foot, the front of the arch. Yeah. Which is where I want to feel the pressure in my feet. So Absolutely. If I get too far into the heels, I'm going to have to make compensations in the golf swing.
Right.
As for the toes as well. So I want to be in a good athletic position, in a spot I can leverage the ground from there.
Right, and so these two things are related. So, getting into that proper posture with good hip hinge and a neutral spine, ideally will set you up to be just near the balls of your feet, inside of the arches, as Alex said, rather than back on your heels where you can't really leverage the ground as well to rotate. So, that's a great way just to get a sense of where your posture should be. You can also, let's go ahead and show them like pelvic tilts and just understanding what maybe some poor posture might be, exactly. What it might look like.
So we can do this without the golf club. So I'm going to, same posture drill, I'm going to go into a good static posture, but in an arms crossed position. Yeah. And then I'm going to go from what we call S posture, getting the arch in my back there, into a tucked position. We call that a C posture or a
right, so you see how the upper back may round, right? So we call that the spine is inflection. So ideally, reality is you can't rotate as well. You're going to be limited in your rotation in your thoracic spine, the middle of your spine
and this is
and your back.
Also the pelvis going into an anterior and a posterior position.
That's right.
So and then from there, I'm going to try to find neutral. You can see my back is straight there.
So show them again. So you can arch once, tuck under, arch again, and then come back to what feels like neutral to you, somewhere in the middle of that range. Now, some of you may have more of a tendency to be an S or C posture, but if you just spend some time exploring and just getting a sense of what it feels like to be in that neutral pelvis, that's a great place to start, because that's going to affect how your hips move and how much, the quality of your rotation and how much rotation you can get.
Now, another thing we do with our juniors as well is to rock onto the toes and then the heels and try to find a neutral position.
Absolutely.
Well, so.
Yeah, really, really good. So again, golf has a posture that really sets you up to move just like other sports. So those are just a good, simple way to work on it. You will see, some of the pros doing that simple drill or doing a simple check with the trail hand on the trail knee to get a sense of whether they're in posture or not and whether they're really ready to move.
Yeah, and you had an interesting drill that you actually used with a half foam roller. And what do you do? What do you use that for?
Let's bring that in.
We'll bring that in. This is level 2 here.
So this is a half foam roller, right? It's on the bottom. It's rounded, so you really you get on there and you have to keep you're challenged to keep your balance. So when you have to put the work in, right, you really are going to learn where you want to be and get the muscles activated to get into balance. So go ahead and show them how you get on there, Alex.
So just like our posture drill, we want to get on this foam roller where we're leveraging the ground, or the foam roller in this case, with the front of the foot, or the ball of the foot. So I want to get to where basically my big toe is the only part hanging off the front of that foam roller. All right, so from there I'm going to go ahead and get on. You'll see how difficult this is.
That's why I'm not on there.
And I'm going to get into my posture position. So the goal is to keep my feet as level as I can, or flat as I can, and stay in posture. And you can feel yourself engaging your muscles and trying not to fall off this thing. So it's a really good drill for that.
Absolutely. So again, there's some overlap here in where your balance is in your feet and where your posture is. When you can get those two things, find that sweet spot, you're ready to go. That's really good job there.
Yeah,
you
really
were working.
good. Yeah, really good. Now, would you also do that with body rotations? Would you advance to that point of, hey, once I feel like I can actually stay there?
Absolutely.
Is that something that you would do also and add swings to?
Absolutely. It's important to note that we wouldn't move past the posture stage, though, until we've mastered that. So we don't want to add rotation until we're in a spot where we can really build that easily or effectively.
Right. Awesome. Well, that's
Yeah,
really good.
Absolutely.
Really, thanks so much, Alex. That was awesome stuff. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And, we'll have Tyler come back on and talk more about the physical side of that. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks,
Alex.
Alex.
That was fantastic. And thanks for being part of our 25th anniversary, or 25th show, if you will. So, woo! All right. So Tyler, as we were just watching Alex go through demonstrating this drill, it kind of came to light to me. I'm kind of going, wow, that's a physical engagement there.
There's a lot working.
And there's a lot of neurological and neuromuscular stuff going on there. So what's being activated here, and why is that so important? And then I'm going to go one step further and go, we see young athletes out there on tour today with seat posture. I'll call Matt Wolfe as one of those players. Obviously a very good player, not saying it's a bad or good thing. It's just that's one of the players we see with seat posture. Sure. He tends to make that work. But so engaged here, seat posture. Yep. Why is Yeah,
well, I would say first and foremost, we want to test ourselves at some point in this progression with an unstable surface. So using a tool like the half foam roller is going to allow us to really turn on the muscles that we want to feel working before we take the club back. You know what I mean? So if you were to work on this drill, 10, 15, 20 minutes, if you got good enough to add those body rotations and then went back to the ground, really feeling, we talk about feeling the ground, right? Really what we're talking about here is what muscles are working to help us rotate? What muscles are working to help us get in and stay in posture? Are we just kind of there hoping for the best, or are we there with an intention? And again, proper setup position is going to give us the best opportunity at doing that. So the half foam roller again is a bit of a progression, but we like to throw it in to get the athlete aware and get their body saying, wait a second, okay, I can do this now. And so when they come back to that stable surface, they're able to be more stable. More stable.
And I'm sure, Dennis, you see this as you go through this with your athletes. What is the feedback that you're hearing from these young athletes? You're going, oh, wow, what's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them struggle with it. I mean, it's definitely a challenge. They definitely feel how much they have to work, and that they've got to get in good posture, got to get their core engaged, and there's a lot going on just to get set up. Really, is what they realize. It's not, as you said, you're not just getting into this. I'm relaxed and ready to swing, nice and loose.
Yeah. Well, you're basically, it's a ballistic sport, and you're going from zero to in a driver swing. We see a lot of these young players swinging at 115, 120 miles an hour, and they're doing that in 1 second. So it's not from a relaxed state; it's from an engaged state, I'm sure.
Sure.
No question.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, you can't just turn the muscles on that, but they've got to be ready to go. And obviously, you change direction, you really, it gets increased. But you've got to be ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, so Tyler, let's talk about the difference in postures there. So we talk about the S posture and C posture. An example of C posture right now that's very prevalent on tour is Matt Wolfe. He's obviously a good player.
Sure.
We see that he's done some incredible things. But are there any physical things there that you see that might be, hey, we're building best golf forever? Is there going to be some limitations to that? But
sure.
Tell us why that may be working for him and may not be working for a general audience.
For starters, let's define some of the postures that Alex was talking about with regards to C posture and S posture, and then we'll tie it back into Matt Wolfe and how maybe but any golfer that you might see who is in a little bit of that too much of a C or a flex position, what that could be doing to their body in the long term. So for starters, when we look at, we'll start with S posture. S posture really dealt with Alex's lower body when his hips seem to be kind of sticking out a little bit too much. You hear this a lot of times when improperly cued to kind of sit on the edge of the bench. Feel like you're sticking your butt out a little bit.
Yeah.
Essentially, what we find is that a lot of humans, a lot of us, just from the lifestyles that we live, from sitting all day. We develop these overactive, tight hip flexors, these underactive, weak glutes, and that imbalance pulls the pelvis into what we refer to as an anterior tilt, or kind of that hips out or the butt out position. This is a tough position to rotate from. It limits our hip rotation for sure. You know, and likewise from the upper body, the opposite there would be what we referred to as C posture, where again, from our lifestyles, we're texting all the time, we're typing on a computer, we're sitting on our couch at home, just kind of slouching. You know, those postures develop, you know, tight pectoral muscles in the front of the body, weak scapular stabilizers on the back, and again, the pelvis has a tendency to want to kind of tuck under into what we would refer to as a posterior tilt, and that puts the spine into too much flexion, which again, too much of one or the other is going to limit our ability to rotate, which brings us back to, you know, some of the tendencies we might see, you know, at some of the professional level, where they set up in a little too much flexion with the intention of going into extension as they take club back, because, well, to be totally honest, they don't have anywhere else to go. They're in flexion. So where are they going to go? They're absolutely going to extend. Whether or not they're truly rotating is up for debate because of some compensations that we know happen elsewhere, whether the right leg is straightening or, you know, there's a little, maybe more side bend or potentially reverse spine angle at play. And Dennis, you can elaborate a little bit as to what those particular mechanics are going to do to the golf club. But we know that if you're in flexion or if you're in too much extension, you know, they say everything in moderation is, you know, kind of good words to live by, but too much of flexion or extension is going to limit the way the vertebrae work and rotate on each other. So just anatomically speaking, we really want to try to find a more neutral position to give ourselves the best opportunity at maintaining our dynamic posture.
Maintaining dynamic posture, but also maybe saving your spine.
Well, yeah,
reducing some injury. Well, Dennis, I guess that comes to path control, right? So this really feeds right into what path control is all about and why we may lose path control.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Wolfe's an interesting case. I mean, make no mistake, you know, if he came to me, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, his ability to hit the golf ball hard and control it is at a very high level. You know, there's a lot of variables, as we talked about before, in the swing, and, you know, to kind of say I'm going to emulate that or emulate that without understanding how it fits into the hole and understanding where you are physically, and it doesn't make sense. So I think, you know, we do see a lot of emulating out there with junior golfers saying, oh, you know, Matthew Wolfe's one of the best players right now, so I'm going to go ahead and get into C posture. Well, you have to understand the chain reaction that follows that and why he does that. And actually, you know, the way he has to compensate, as you said, you know, he goes into extension, which essentially is getting himself into a steep position with the right leg straightening. So now he's found a way to kind of make that all work and shallow the club out and rotate really hard. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the simplest, most repeatable way, or it's something for somebody to emulate, but he certainly made it work.
I think he's made it work for sure.
I think one thing that we should clarify too is when we talk about function dictates form, it doesn't mean that there's one way to swing the golf club. You know, we understand that junior golf athletes, a lot of them come to us and they're very moldable, right? We can build that athletic foundation over time. Matthew Wolfe's physical foundation as a junior athlete may have dictated this is how he's going to swing the club most powerfully. And so, you know, over time he got really, really good at that. And it certainly has upside in terms of generating power, hitting the ball a long way, but it also may come with some, you know, effects down the road that are yet to be determined. But I think function dictates form doesn't mean there's one way to swing the club. You know, we need to determine how you're moving and, you know, help you move most efficiently for you. So just to clarify.
Well, and that goes back to assessing, right? You know, and understanding at an early age of, you know, what you can and cannot do, your weaknesses and your strengths, obviously. Again, you know, I'm going to, you know, Junior Golf Hub, do your self-assessment, understand where you are, and find a professional around you to help you with that as well. So, and I know, Dennis, you know, as you talk about, you know, restrictions to path control or club face control, one leads to the other. So how do you get to club face control, getting the ball in the hole least amount of strokes possible when you facing it, you know, kids who, you know, struggle with that imbalance of good posture, bad posture, you know, static to dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, I think we attack it from both angles. We definitely put a big emphasis on long-term development, so improving movement quality and helping them get educated. You know, we're getting into our off-season mode where we're really going to get a little bit deeper into the mechanics and all the work we do to lay a better foundation. So just understanding that, you know, how the body moves and how it changes posture is going to determine your ability to deliver the club consistently and the path you want. But we also do a lot of random practice, which is, you know, just let's connect to the target and let's observe ball flight and let's, you know, allow them to kind of athletically make adjustments so that they can get the results they want. So we really balance the two, but we've got a nice period of time coming up here the next few months to really get a little bit deeper into the movement quality side of it.
Yeah, and so what are some of those things that you would do to kind of get into that and now go from static posture to dynamic to path control and understanding club-face awareness?
Sure. So, well, we work it from the inside out. So just simply after you get into posture and balance, as Alex demonstrated, and if you start to master this balance on the half foam roller and your posture is good, we'll start to work on rotation, which I think we'll be talking about more next week. But just doing a body swing, arms crossed like this, and going through a full range of motion, and just understanding how the body's moving. Am I changing posture? Am I standing up? As Tyler talked about, tight hamstrings as you go at maximum speed might pull you to stand up out of posture. Now you're forced to kind of flip the hands more, for example, very common with junior golfers. So just understanding these two segments of lower body and torso without the arms and the club can be really beneficial, and just doing a lot of reps and then adding the club and doing slow motion swings can be really good.
Right. And Tyler, on that note, when we talk about the power pack of the golf swing, we're really talking about the pelvis region and obviously upper, torso, and then, obviously the lower body and how that has to function well together. And you talked about, the hamstrings and the lats, but I think last week we discussed, glutes and the obliques. I mean, those are the king and queens of the golf swing.
100%.
So that has a lot to do with the foundational movement of the pelvis.
No doubt. And the pelvis is really the liaison or the middleman between the upper body and the lower body. So if the motions that Alex was demonstrating with the anterior and posterior tilt, and then the ability to find where your weight distribution is, in your feet, is tough for you, that's an exercise that you really should work to master. In the golf swing, just to go into a little bit, we might talk about this more as we get into rotation, but the pelvis has to tilt and it has to rotate. And if you can do both of those motions at the right time in your mechanics, again, ideally not something you're thinking about before you take the club back. This is something we're working on in the gym and taking to our golf swing, in practice. But if it can tilt and rotate at the right times in the golf swing, it's a very powerful motion. If you're stuck in one position or the other and struggle to rotate, you're really leaving a lot on the table. We'll keep it at that for right now.
That's actually a really good place to leave it for this week. And Dennis, maybe some closing thoughts on what we need to do, static and dynamic posture?
Yeah, I think, one of the big things is that regardless of where you live, this is the off season, and there are some simple drills like what we demonstrated here that might seem monotonous, but they can really help you understand, your body better and what good posture is. So, dedicate some time, come up with a plan, dedicate some time to this aspect of it. It can really help you.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate that simple is hard. I know we've talked about this in the past. Simple is hard. Some of these things may seem very simple, but doing it correctly is very difficult. So challenge yourself to stay with it, be patient with it, and I think you'll find yourself getting better long term for sure. But thanks so much. Andrew, do we have any questions?
We do. The first question is, how do I know if I'm in good posture?
How do I know I'm in good posture?
Yeah, I think on the golf side, probably a lot of you might be using video out there. There are some different technologies where you can draw a line, let's say, or you can just use a piece of paper and just kind of put it on the video and just go along your spine, like from tailbone through your ear, and how does it look like? Do you look like you're in C posture or the S posture? Just see what it looks like on your back. That's a good place to start. And then number two, you can go through the swing and see how it changes relative to that, or a vertical line right along your backside and see if your pelvis actually moves in closer to the ball, which we've talked about in the past, because that's a big indicator of standing up out of posture. So that'd be a way to track static and dynamic posture on a video.
One way that I would look at posture is just standing posture. Forget about the golf swing for just a second. Where are we from a standing position? So if you took a broomstick or a driver, put it behind your back, can you maintain contact with the club or the broomstick with your head, your upper back, and your hips as you're just standing tall? So what you might notice is that if you've got a forward head position, maybe your upper back and your hips are touching the bar, but your head isn't. So we need a little chin tuck, or maybe I'm rounded and my hips aren't touching, but my upper back and my head are touching. So that'll just give you a little feedback as to, am I in good standing posture?
Yeah, great.
The next question is, what are some exercises that a junior around 10 years old can do to improve the posture or create that posture you talk about?
Love it.
Yeah.
You want me to go? I can go.
Yeah, I mean, look, just simply the posture drill that Alex demonstrated, I think it's pretty simple on the golf side, but
yeah,
I think it starts on your side.
The 8, 10, 11, 12-year-old time frame is a huge window of opportunity for us to learn and be more aware of where our body is in space. We start them off lying on the ground in a bridge, what we call a hook lying position, where the heels are in under the knees. And you can do the motion that Alex was doing, where I always like to say, if you're lying on the ground, pretend like a bug is going to crawl under your back. So you're kind of creating that anterior tilt or that arch. And then I want you to smush the bug, all right? It's a good way for the kids to relate to maybe getting that pelvis moving. But, essentially what we're trying to do there is create that anterior and posterior tilt. The sooner the kids can get that motion down and become stable in that position, it's going to make things a lot easier down the road when they start to get stronger.
And, the other part of that is just understanding, like, kids start with perfect posture. I mean, you look at baby crib, you're actually starting with perfect posture. So we move away from that. So, anything activity-wise, that's going to help you maintain a good, erect spine, move the arms away from the body is a good way to just kind of, keep your activity, keep your posture the way you would like it. So
last tip, get rid of your phone. That'll help you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we got a pop quiz winner.
We do. The winner is YouTube user Duncan.
Duncan,
Great.
All right.
Thanks,
Duncan, way to go. You won
Appreciate
$25 off your Junior Golf Hub Premium membership. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for your answer there. So
the answer to the pop quiz.
Oh yeah, we didn't give you the answer. So the answer to the pop quiz question is?
Essentially, static posture is when we set up to the golf ball before we take the club away.
Yep.
Dynamic posture would be as soon as we start to move that club.
Yeah, pretty simple. But thanks so much, Duncan, for watching our 25th episode. So thanks so much for that. And thank you guys.
Thanks,
what a fun thing this has been so far. So some of you may be tuned in. We have a virtual parent information night tonight. Starting at 7 p.m.
Your answer there. So
make sure you check that out.
The answer to the pop quiz.
Yeah, we didn't give you the answer. So the answer to the pop.
We'll be talking more about
that. Who's that good for, Roger? Who would want to?
Anyone who might be interested in coming to Ethan Allen Preparatory. So one of our sponsors, and we were always grateful that they're here and joining us in this episode or in all of our episodes as a sponsor for that matter. So great opportunity for a lot of young men and young women out there to achieve their greatness in the classroom, on the golf course, and in life. And as always, the Junior Golf Hub as a sponsor, thanks so much. Putting that app in your pocket, make sure you're downloading the app, put those coaches in your pocket, keep up with your profile, making sure you're researching schools that are great fits for you, and hopefully you'll find that perfect fit out there. And as always, make sure that you're enjoying your journey, and let's get after it.